Welcome. This isn't just history. It's unfinished business. A war that shattered families, pride, borders, and came full circle after 51 long years. Let's travel back to 1971. Pakistan was divided in two wings. East and West, one country, 1,600 kilometers apart, with India sitting in the middle. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, actually. For years, East Pakistanis felt like second-class citizens. Their language, Bengali, wasn't given national status. Economic aid mostly went to the West. Representation in the army and bureaucracy minimal. And then the 1970 elections, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League won a clear majority, but power wasn't transferred. The result? Riots, crackdowns, Operation Searchlight, and the beginning of civil war. India stepped in, but not suddenly. They had already been training Mukti Bahini fighters for months. And when 10 million refugees from East Pakistan poured into India, Indira Gandhi declared, "Enough." On December 3, 1971, Pakistan struck first. Airbases in Pathankot, Agra, Amritsar, bombed. But India was ready. With Soviet support and US distractions, they launched a three-pronged invasion: land, air, and sea. The Navy strike. Brutal. Operation Trident was launched by India on the night of December 4. Karachi port, Pakistan's economic jugular, was set on fire. PNS Khyber sank. Flames visible for miles. Pakistan's navy was caught off guard, unprepared for a modern sea assault. And with no naval backup from allies, the ocean became silent. America's role? Complicated. President Nixon and Henry Kissinger were pro-Pakistan. They didn't want India getting too close to the Soviet Union. So they sent the 7th Fleet to the Bay of Bengal, led by the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. But it was mostly symbolic. It didn't stop the surrender. It didn't change the ground reality. By the time the US moved, Dhaka had already fallen. The Arab world? Divided. Saudi Arabia condemned the breakup of Pakistan, publicly. Jordan sent symbolic aid. But no military support came. Why? Because they were caught between oil politics and Cold War pressure. Everyone waited, no one acted. Only one country sent troops during that chaos, Turkey. Yes, Turkey quietly offered to send military advisors, but the logistics failed. Still, Turkish newspapers mourned the fall of Dhaka. To this day, Turkey remains one of the few Muslim nations that always stood by Pakistan during its darkest hours. Now fast forward. 2025, Operation Bunyan-ul-Marsoos. The name alone shook headlines.
إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص.
Pakistan, after 5 decades, showed it's no longer stuck in 1971. Cyber warfare, naval intelligence, stealth operations, and for the first time, media synchronization. This time, Pakistan caught an Indian submarine red-handed, trying to breach its waters. This wasn't just defense, it was symbolic justice. A loud message to India. We are no longer blind. And we are not silent anymore. What did the world say? America? They issued a carefully worded statement urging restraint from both sides. But inside diplomatic circles, Washington praised Pakistan's restraint in not escalating the conflict into open war. Turkey applauded it. President Erdogan's Foreign Office said, Pakistan has the right to secure its waters and dignity. Turkish news channels ran documentaries about 1971 and how history had turned. UAE and Saudi Arabia, interestingly, congratulated Pakistan for mature response and precision. Not just emotionally, but diplomatically, Pakistan played smart. No empty threats. Just clear action. India? Denied everything. Of course they did. But their silence on international forums said enough. And for the first time, Middle East public opinion leaned towards Pakistan. Not because of war, but because of how the war was prevented. So what did Pakistan really gain? It wasn't about land or blood. It was about memory. About finally breaking the silence of 1971. And make no mistake, the cost of 1971 wasn't just political. Mothers lost sons. Children never saw their fathers again. In both countries. General Niazi signed the surrender with tears. But 93,000 soldiers behind him were asking the same question. Why were we left alone? Today, that chapter is being rewritten. Not with war, but with readiness. For CSS students, this is a goldmine of strategic, political, and psychological case study. But for the rest of us, it's a mirror. To learn from. And not repeat. Because history doesn't die. It just waits, to be understood. The streets were alive with flags. Green fluttered against a sky still haunted by silence. The operation had ended. Guns cooled, boots withdrew, and somewhere in the cities and villages of Pakistan, a strange calm settled. It wasn't just victory, it was vindication. Mothers stepped out for the first time without glancing over their shoulders. Children went back to school, drawing soldiers with crayons. Markets reopened. The national anthem rang louder in school halls. And in this moment of collective breath, a question rose, not through news anchors or official statements, but quietly, through the people: what now? When bullets stop, memory begins. And memory is more political than war itself. You could feel the shift. The same army that people criticized just weeks ago was now being showered with roses. The same faces once trending with hashtags of accountability were now paraded with pride. Streets filled with chants of unity, but between every cheer lived contradiction. A strange kind of selective amnesia set in. It's not new, this is how public memory works. In times of fear, we seek saviors. And when victory comes, we rewrite the timeline. Crowds celebrated the operation's success, but beneath the surface, the question still burned: was this a triumph of the state, or a reset of the story? While cities clapped for returning soldiers, one man remained silent behind bars. Imran Khan. Once hailed as the hope of a generation, now trapped in the same political machinery he had vowed to dismantle. Arrested after the violent protests of May 9, charged with sedition, blamed for chaos, and yet, he remained the face of resistance for millions. The irony couldn't be sharper. The same government officials being praised for crushing terrorism were the ones many had blamed for breaking democracy. The same institutions now earning respect had, just months ago, been called out in street rallies. This is the paradox of Pakistani politics, today. Villain becomes tomorrow's savior. The same public that demands change often salutes the very system they once condemned. But this isn't just about politics. It's about memory. About how a nation forgets. About how history is made not just by facts, but by feelings. Remember Manto? Once dragged through courts for corrupting society, now he's quoted in university halls. Remember Faiz Ahmad Faiz? Labeled a traitor, exiled, today, his verses are sung on Independence Day. This isn't coincidence. It's a pattern. Pakistan has a long history of silencing voices that later become symbols. And as the dust settled after Operation Bunyan-ul-Marsoos, you could feel that same pattern forming again. The line between patriot and problem, between rebel and hero, it's always been thin. And always temporary. Across social media, the narrative surged. Hashtags like #ThankYouForces and #UnitedPakistan trended for days. TikTokers posted tributes. Families uploaded videos of emotional flag hoisting. But just behind the screen, something else simmered: discontent, confusion, questions. In Lahore, Karachi, even Quetta, you could hear voices saying, "Okay, we won. But what about justice? What about truth?" Victory has a strange way of muting accountability. When the nation claps, it becomes harder to question. And that's where things get complicated. Because this wasn't just a military operation. This was a national reset. In 1971, we lost territory. In 2025, we reclaimed fear. And that difference is massive. The war of the past broke borders, this one built morale. But here's the danger: if you celebrate too loudly, you might not hear the quiet warnings. Operation Bunyan-ul-Marsoos taught us we are still capable, still resilient. But it also exposed how quickly we, as a people, shift sides. The very institutions that faced fire for political interventions are now being handed medals. And maybe they deserve them. Maybe this time they were right. But the speed of forgiveness, the speed of praise, it says more about us than about them. In tea shops and buses, you'll hear old men say, "This was the Pakistan I dreamed of." But dreams are tricky. They blur lines. Because while one part of the country celebrated, another still mourned. The PTI supporters still behind bars, the families still protesting outside courts, the journalists still censored. Their voices didn't trend. Their wounds didn't go viral. Because this wasn't their victory. This was someone else's chapter, and they were left out of the script. That's the other side of national unity, it often comes at a cost. And globally, the world watched. Some praised the operation as a masterclass in precision. Others raised eyebrows at the legality, the optics, the silence from inside. India mocked a photo Pakistan released, calling it a reused Chinese image. Owaisi laughed on stage, even copying needs intelligence. Western newspapers covered it briefly, coldly. To them, this wasn't victory, it was choreography. A trailer for something unfinished. And maybe they were right. Because Operation Bunyan-ul-Marsoos was never meant to be just about defense. It was about perception. About reclaiming the narrative. And that's a war Pakistan's always been fighting, against the world, and sometimes, against itself. But still, there's something to be said about the streets. For once, they weren't filled with slogans of division. For once, people clapped together. That matters. Because in a country so often fractured by language, politics, religion, even a moment of unity is rare. And when it comes, you hold on to it, even if you know it won't last. That's what makes Pakistan what it is, a country built on contradiction, but carried by resilience. You can debate the politics, the power, the pain, but you can't debate the spirit. And so, as the dust settles and the headlines fade, one truth remains: victory is loud. But nation building is silent. It takes longer. It demands more. It doesn't go viral. And no matter how many times we fight, win, or lose, the real question remains: will we learn? There was a time, not too long ago, when every rally in Pakistan echoed with chants of "Give respect to the ballot. Give voice to the people." But now, the only chants that filled the air were "Long live the army" and "Salute to our heroes." There's nothing wrong with that, gratitude is due where courage is shown. But the silence that followed, the silence around civilian leadership, around democracy, around accountability, that silence was loud. And it reminded us, in Pakistan, victories are always double-edged. One side heals, the other disappears. If this story moved you, don't just scroll. Speak. Share this with your loved ones. Let them feel what you felt. Because silence helps no one, but memory can heal nations. Leave a comment. Tell us what part struck your heart. What moment made you think? What truth reminded you of our forgotten strength? Like this video if you believe history deserves honesty. Subscribe if you believe Pakistan's story should be told without filters, without fear. And above all, stay curious. Stay uncomfortable. Stay awake. Because the fight for truth has no off switch. We'll see you in the next one.